G'day guys, welcome back to Beers and Breakevens, brought to you by Bloke in a Bar. Magic round this weekend, it's going to be an absolute cracker. Go out, grab yourself a case of Bloke, support the beer that supports the best sporting platform in the sporting world, especially in rugby league. I believe the Hello Sport boys and Denon are making their way up to Magic round. I think they'll be at the Caxton on Saturday Arvo, so make sure you pop in there, say hello to the boys, have a few beers. They'll be having a great time. Welcome my, I was about to say guest, my co-host. Guest would have been a kick in the dick. Timmy Williams, welcome back, brother.
Good to be a guest, mate. Yeah, and I appreciate you having me on today for the show. But I tell you what, I wish I was at the Caxton this weekend. The boys will need their snorkel though, because there's a shit ton of rain coming at the moment. But yeah, looking forward to Magic weekend.
Mate, I think you need more than a bit of rain to stop the Hello Sport boys. I'm sure they'll still have a good fucking time. But we are recording at a different time this week. We have got the Hello Sport boys and the About Even boys on their way in about 30 minutes or so. So we'll get cracking into our work. Our ranks this week, I scored 1,362. I went up about 150 spots, so I'm currently sitting 417th overall. Timmy, how you travelling?
Mate, I'm getting more hesitant jumping on here every week with you because I've been calling it for about a month that I'm going to jump you any day, and I was bloody close to it last week, and then, mate, that gap's widened a little bit. I had a stinker last week, 1,200 points, which doesn't sound that bad, but there were some big scores out there. Dropped 1,000 spots into 1,800, so still not badly placed, but, mate, I got the red arrows, you got the green ones.
Yeah, no, the higher-ups are starting to notice. Don't worry about that. Matty's prepping for the next show, so he's busy, but he did pretty well. Okay this week. Moved up a little bit, so Matty will keep improving week to week. Our Beers and Breakevens group. Timmy, this is getting out of control at the moment. We've got 3 of the top 10, which is great to see. We've got 7 of the top 30 in our group for the overall. So you're looking at about a quarter of the top 30 are in the Beers and Breakevens group, which is great to see. As it stands right now, Alex is leading that group, the Bearded Clams. He's sitting first in our group and 7th overall out of 140K. Second place, Team Hoppo, Mr. Consistent. He's sitting 8th overall in SuperCoach, second in our group. Glenn, the Dark Knights, sitting 9th overall in SuperCoach, 3rd in our group. Lachlan, I believe he's a newcomer, 15th overall in SuperCoach, sitting 4th in our group. And Dane, what a name, the Oprah Tinfreeze, sitting, what is he sitting? 23 overall and 5th in our group. So great to see. Condolences to our mate Sam that's dropped out for the first time. Porch Lights, unlucky brother. I think I'm sitting 400th overall and I'm about 80 in this group. It is ridiculous.
Good stuff, hey, mate. And hopefully the boys and girls in there have taken our advice and, you know, we're long-term. We'll probably, I should say, I'm a long-term strategist. You're maybe a bit more short-term, but anyone thinking long-term, mate, I reckon we could trifecta it this year.
That's offensive, but I'll ignore it. Okay, let's dive into Team List Tuesday. Obviously, they did come out yesterday, so you guys would have seen those team lists, seen the changes. So we'll just go over a few that are really important for SuperCoach. First one. Burbo holds his spot at centre. Olakuatu returns, thank God. A lot of people jumping on Burbo, same as myself this week. But Timmy Williams came in and worried me a little bit this morning. Tell me about Burbo. He's got his tinfoil hat on.
Mate, he's a huge call this week because I think he's the most traded in play, him and brother Tommy Turbo. It just reeks of Isaiah Tass to me a little bit, possibly with worse repercussions in that, 188K, neg 51 break even. I dodged the Tass bullet last week. When I say dodged it, he could still come back in next week and make a ton of cash. But Burbo worries me because they've got Brad Parker coming back at some stage. They have a few other options. Burbo's more likely to drop to the bench at some point rather than out of the squad like Tass has. So if he drops to the bench and plays that 10, 15-minute super sub role, it just stunts any cash growth. Whereas at least when Tass comes back in, if you hold him long term, maybe for that round 17 bye, he'll come back in and the money should still be there to be made. The torrential rain forecast for Brisbane this weekend, you look at that into Manly's run coming up against Parramatta and Melbourne, there's just a few red flags there for me. That being said, if he scores alright against the Broncos this weekend, he could also be 400K in like 3 weeks' time, play round 13, punch out a ton there, and I look like an idiot. So, look, I'm not against buying him at all, and I'm still semi-considering it, but I just have my reservations.
Food for thought, 100%. Mate, the New Zealand Warriors dropped their team list. Tohu Harris, first time we've seen him this season. Great to see. Hopefully, he plays limited minutes over the next 5 or 6 weeks, gets a little bit cheaper, and then we can bring him in a few weeks' time. Do you see him in your future plans?
Big time, and we'll speak more and more about round 13 and the bye period coming up over the next couple of months, starting right now. And Tohu's a bloke who's at 600k, but a SuperCoach absolute gun. Averaged 69 last season and the season before, which is pretty elite numbers, particularly for guys with bye coverage. So I think the hope from Tohu is that, obviously coming back from an ACL injury, which is a bit of a concern, but the fact that he plays in the middle, I think he'll probably play more middle than edge, particularly with Josh Curran coming back soon. If he can play limited minutes for the next 2 or 3 weeks, drop to that 550k for round 13, he's a bloke we can pick up, and provided he gets back to decent form, which I don't doubt that he will, he could be a season-long keeper. So, yeah, massive play, Tohu.
Mate, you already mentioned him, Isaiah Tass. A lot of us picked him up last week. Dropped this week. Very disappointing. Paulo back in. I think there's a world where Tass does come back in over the next few weeks or months. So I think we will make money eventually, as you said. But for those that grabbed him this week, very disappointing. You're sitting on the right side of the fence, though. Sitting there like a fucking Cheshire cat when I walked in here this morning, which was great to see.
Pretty happy about it. The team list were pretty kind to me, to be honest. 24 last week, Tass. So, as we said, he's still got the 84 in his rolling average, so negative 29 break even. So, when he does come back in, any semi-decent score will initiate another big round of price rises. The worry, of course, is if he comes back in and scores another 20 or 30, it stunts sort of all cash growth pretty quickly and he becomes a sell. So, big game for Tass when he comes back in, because it could be the difference between making, 100k and 300k if he was to jag a few tries. So, anyway.
Mate, Cam Murray been ruled out for the next couple of weeks, potentially out of Origin 1 as well. Jai Arrow moves to the 13. What's your take on both of these?
Big for SuperCoach. Big for Jai Arrow owners, because Arrow had his worst game of the season last week, 28 points in 58 minutes. Minutes aren't always a massive issue with Arrow, because one of them guys who in fewer minutes, like most forwards do, if they know they're playing fewer minutes, they get out a bit more work, bigger scores, that sort of thing. Murray gone, not the end of the world for owners, because he's top dollar anyway. I think he's around 700k. Had Origin coming up anyway, where I sort of figured he might get rest or fewer minutes over that period. So I don't hate that. You can get in an extra round, sort of 13 or 17 number, IPAT being the obvious replacement. But Jai Arrow, who I've still got him on the chopping block prior to round 13 because of Origin, and the Bunnies not playing round 13 as well. Not that it'd matter for Arrow, but back to the middle now. So if he plays his 60, maybe even 65 minutes, which is very possible, his work rate's going to be way higher. What excited me about the edge move this year was jagging the odd attacking stat outside Cody Walker. They just didn't happen. So in the middle, he's just going to plough through work. And while I do think he's probably a sell by round 13, he just doesn't become urgent. And I like him as a play this weekend.
Yeah, and I think JD will be saying to him, you know how important Murray is. We're in trouble as it is. We need big performances from you. So I'm expecting a lot out of Arrow over the next few weeks. Nick Meaney, he's been named at 1 for the Melbourne Storm, replacing Ryan Pappenhausen. Meaney goal kicking. I think he's 550k, fullback centre wing. Not bad.
Yeah, look, he's all right. 550k is a pretty big tag. The neg 5 break even's obviously appealing, because it's one of them pretty low risk investments. But Penrith this week in a Suncorp Stadium bog, into the Cowboys, who have I think the second best defence in the NRL,
yep,
into Manly, who have basically got their full side back or just about there. That's at Amy Park. Then they have the bye. Then they come back against the Roosters at the SCG. Mate, that's a pretty brutal matchup. And I get why people are going there. He should goal kick in the absence of Ryan Pappenhausen, but I think there's probably better fullbacks on the market.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of guys moving to 1, Nico Hines. Sort of played halfback, 5'8", fullback last week. Sort of did just about fucking everything for the Sharkies last week. Him at fullback over the next few weeks. Very, very appealing. Obviously, with Papi now out for a few weeks, I think there's a real chance that Nico Hines plays Origin, which will hurt us a little bit. But the next 2 or 3 weeks, they look like they're going to be sensational for him.
Yeah, I thought the Origin thing, without digressing from sort of SuperCoach too much, I didn't see Papi playing Origin.
Neither did I. I thought Hines would be the guy just for the body, the size. I would have had Jack Whiten before Papi, to be honest with you.
But you're right. And look, the Sharkies weren't playing round 13 anyway, so it's probably more of a concern for 17. But, mate, one thing I did get right last week, went early on Blake Taff, still had a stack of money to be made, still does have a bit of money to be made. Went from him to Nico Hines, and thank Christ, because if I didn't, with that 185, I'd be in all sorts, mate.
That would have been a huge kick in the dick. Mate, let's get on some hot topics this week. I've got questions from you guys coming in. About 85% of them were, what the fuck do I do with Ryan Pappenhausen? So we're going to dive into that now. Mate, a heap of money there to move elsewhere. There's a lot of options, but to me, I'm looking at it going, I don't know which is the best option. I'm not overly convinced on getting Turbo for the next month or so leading into Origin. To look 100% to me last week. Where are you sitting?
Initial thought was, I looked at it and went, Papi's gone, sweet. Coming to my team, Tommy Choi, which happy days. No concern at all. Then I looked into it a little bit more, and I went, Brisbane this week, in the mud. Like, when I talk rain for Brisbane, there's like downpours the next 3-4 days. Parramatta in round 11, as I said. Melbourne Storm round 12 at Amy Park. Parramatta home game. He'll then miss round 13. He then comes back after Origin. He could easily rest. Manly play on the Sunday. Then plays the Cowboys. Then Melbourne again. Then misses round 17. Then could not back up round 18. That's not a lot of footy there, and when he is on the park, it's tough conditions and tough opposition. So at 900k, I'm tending to steer elsewhere in terms of Papi replacements. I've sort of not lucked out because he's killed me for, 9-10 weeks now, but I have Tamari Martin at 5'8". Let's get this right. He hasn't killed me for the last 10 weeks. Cam Munster, who I don't own. I can flip Tamari to fullback and finally get in Munster, which is just a massive stress relief despite, Origin looming and all those sort of things. Tough draw for Melbourne. Munster for me, but other replacements, you look at Scott Drinkwater. Drinky has a really tough draw after this week as well. Break even of 30, so that money's about to stop going up. So you get him at his pointy end of his price tag. And then you look at James Tedesco, mate. The Roosters draw, that's what's making all these decisions really difficult. Manly have a tough draw. Melbourne have a tough draw. The Roosters are the worst of the lot of them. Parramatta this week, Suncorp Bog, into Penrith, into the Sharks. He then won't play round 13 with Origin, then comes back to Melbourne, Parramatta, Penrith, and then the bye. So I'm extremely reluctant to invest in any Roosters players despite playing the Raiders in round 13. Mate, fullback options early in the year were like the elite position. We're pretty scarce on them at the moment.
You ready for my pod play?
I'm excited.
Are you ready for it? Because I know you're going to shoot it down.
I don't know if I am, but...
Oh, really? I am thinking of making a pod play this week and going Reece Walsh over the next few weeks. I agree with everything you just said about every other player that we mentioned there. Reece Walsh, I don't mind his draw over the next few weeks. I understand he has to do a lot to score points. I think he's at 2% ownership now. I think he's 400k. That's the move I'm making this week. Change my mind.
Reece Walsh isn't my issue. The Warriors are my issue. Mate, they couldn't put points past an 11-man Sharks outfit. They were absolutely massacred in that one. They had 12 blokes the entire game, 11 for part of the game, the Sharkies, and they still couldn't get it done. And yeah, they might bounce back from a pretty ordinary performance, but that just reeks of red flags to me. So even Walsh with his 57, I think hit back immediately as that send-off happened on the weekend, the Will Kennedy send-off. So what's he got? 2 scores. He has a 76 and an 86 this season. The rest of them have been under 57. He'll play round 13 coverage, huge pod play. I just don't trust the Warriors at all.
I look at the Warriors at the moment, and yes, on the weekend that was a fucking train wreck, hard to watch. I agree with you 100%. I just think there will be a bounce back this week to some extent. They take on South Sydney, who aren't going overly well. They lose Cam Murray. They're going to really struggle through the middle, in my opinion. I think there can be a bounce back factor there. I think Tohu Harris walks into this side at the perfect time. They then play the Dragons, and then they play Newcastle. And then, as you said, they play round 13 against Manly, missing all their troops. So it is a pod play. And, mate, there's a chance that I buy him this weekend and I don't even play him this weekend.
Yeah,
I'm actually even tinkering with holding Papi for this week and going to Reece Walsh once the South game's gone.
With his price, mate, I don't hate it. And it's break even 68, so money-wise, he probably around about holds value. So if you want to wait a week, you can and explore, assess how other options go over this weekend. But... yeah, look, the more I look at it, Averaged 64 last season. That was his debut NRL year, so we know there's a SuperCoach player in there. If you believe the Warriors can bounce back, look, I don't hate it, but geez, you're a braver man than I, which we all know.
And look, I agree. Turbo obviously is a 10 times better SuperCoach player than Reece Walsh, but mate, I'm not convinced he's at 100%. He's going to miss 13. I think he's going to get a couple of rests. I honestly think that Reece Walsh will score close to the same amount of points as Turbo over the next few weeks. He'll play 2 or 3 extra games, obviously, but that's the reality of the situation.
And that's the thing, mate. Like, you're not necessarily saying Walsh is going to come out and outscore Turbo, but he's half the price of him.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about buys, you look at that and go, with all those issues we outlined with Tommy Turbo, it makes complete sense. Yeah, Tommy could come out and punch out 200, but if he doesn't sort of go, 120 plus, he's probably not worth that price tag. So
leave in the comments your thoughts on me going to Reece Walsh. Am I mad, or is it a play that you might start to consider? Now, mate, hot topic this week. It is going to be pissing up there in Brisbane. Sits versus starts. Very, very important this week, especially with some matchups that are going up. I mean, I'm looking at Isaac Tungo thinking I probably won't play him this week, which if you would have said that to me 6 weeks ago, I would have laughed at you. But it is the reality of the situation. Tell us about sits versus starts this week.
Yeah, so as we know, SuperCoach, particularly the last 2 seasons, has been tailored towards these high ceiling players, basically your backline players, hookers to a less degree. The base stat forwards of old, where that used to be the target of playing guys like your Jai Arrows and these sorts of blokes, were everything. It hasn't been that way for a number of years now. This weekend, with the forecast and with a lot of tough matchups, is reverting back to the old a little bit. So a game I definitely want to avoid where possible is that Penrith and Storm one, because the defences, the attacks are good, but their defences are so good. Add in 150 mils of rain over the next 4 days. It just, forwards I don't mind playing, the likes of your Liam Martins, who might have been on the cusp there a little bit, but I'll be sitting Xavier Coates in that one. Isaac Tago, I'll be sitting him. Guys like, as I said, Jai Arrow, who, all right, he'll get through his minutes. The game will be probably played through the middle third of the ground. He'll probably make a shitload of tackles, runs, bank that safe 50-55 as opposed to the 15 that Xavier Coates or Tago might throw up to you. Joseph Suwali, the best day of the weekend is Sunday, where the rain doesn't look too bad. However, by that point, there'll have been 5 games through Suncorp Stadium, so it'll be a heavy 10 and then some if they get onto it. Basically, I'm sitting all outside backs as best as possible. I might play Tolatau Cooler just due to, I don't mind the matchup in that one. Just on that game, what edge do we think Cooler and Benny Trebojevic are going to play? Because I'm trying to work out who Katoni Staggs is going to line up on. Because we've seen Burbo play both left and right edge, and Cooler the same. So if it's Cooler, he's young and inexperienced. Sorry, this seems to happen every week, but it's killing me, mate. Burbo has been school. We've mentioned it a few times the last couple of weeks defensively. Cooler defensively is a weapon. So if Staggs gets 1-on-1 with Burbo, geez, I like that matchup.
And that's the thing. If they were playing, just about any other fucking team, probably outside of the Roosters with Joey Manu at right centre, I would say Kohler would be right. I think there's a world, but they might have to move him to the left to handle Staggs this week. Because you pointed it, we both spoke about it on Bloke on Monday. Burbo defensively, you can catch him out there, and that's in the second row. It only gets harder when you get out to CTW with Staggs running at you at Suncorp. If it is raining, I think that helps his cause, obviously.
Yeah,
a heap. But it's an interesting one. I would like to see them keep Kohler on the right hand side just for continuity, but you have to seriously consider swapping them over, don't you?
Mate, massively. Just even if it's just for one game, huge consideration. Chris Randall.
If I'm Brisbane, I'd even consider moving Staggs depending on where.
Imagine that. Imagine that.
Yeah, just chase him.
Chris Randall played 80 minutes the last few weeks. He's bounced back to a bit of form and initiated another cash rise. Again, a guy tailor-made for the conditions this week. Played through the middle third. He could make 60 tackles if there's enough ball in play. So a guy that I haven't played in my 17 for, a month or two. He'll be straight in there, particularly playing 80 minutes. Looks a pretty rock-solid option. You can bank his 50. wouldn't say there's a lot of upside there, but if you judge an attacking stat, that can become 70 as per last week, and just avoids that, hopefully, chance of a 15-20 from an outside back who doesn't touch the ball and gets the flu on the sideline.
Yeah. Mate, let's move into some questions from the listeners. First one comes from the Cardi Party, Trent Cartwright. If team value is already at 13 million, do we start to turn down cheapies like Burbo? Now, I'll kick it off with team value isn't something that I've looked too far into over the last few years, but now that my team value is good this year, I'm definitely interested in it. For other people that haven't really taken much note of it over the years, what does it mean?
Basically, we talk about all season. I think the salary cap starts at 9.4 mil, I think it might be, 9.4, 9.6. So basically, all the money you've made from the start of the season, your combined players are now worth $13.6 million. So it's a reflection of basically how well you've done with your cheapies and your mid-range and all these blokes making money. So while we say at the start of the year we want to set up our teams with as much money and as much squad value as we can so that we've got that money to play with. So you're 13.6 mil, I believe. I'm 13.6 mil, and I'm very happy with that. So 13 mil is probably not too far off the mark, and I think it's absolutely the time of year to start. You know, you don't need to get every cheapie that comes into your books. Last week, for example, as I mentioned, with iCut, which is probably going to be maybe anywhere from 50 to 200,000 on Blake Taff, to get in Nico Hines, who was set to lose money last week, but it banked me about an extra 135 points.
Yep.
So our squad should be set up well enough financially, or most of us, to start making plays like that and not worry about necessarily getting an Isaiah Tass last week or a Benny Trebojevic this week. It doesn't mean they're not good buys, and it doesn't mean we look past gun cheapies, but I'm starting to take preference in just going, I'm trying to stack my 25 and particularly my 17 with as many guns as possible.
Mate, our next question comes from Kalen_Gibb, big fan of the show. Shift Isaac Tungo on. As I said, I'm probably not even going to play him this week, to be honest with you. I think he's leaked 80 or 90K or something over the last few weeks, but he does play round 13. That's my main point. Shoot.
He's one of the most traded players this week, and it's just madness. I think people traded Tallyn May last week as well, worried about Brian Toto coming back.
Just wait for the fucking team list.
Yeah.
What are you doing?
Yeah, for starters, yeah. Tallyn May, I think he's a season-long keeper. Isaac Tago, yeah, he's hit the skids a bit. He's down to 438K, pretty high break even. But one thing we probably do need to point out, which we'll do over and over again, head-to-head players who aren't worried about the origin period, aren't worried about their overall ranking, they just want to beat their mates and finish high on their ladder. Isaac Tago probably isn't a keeper, let's be forward. So they can probably look to sell him and focus on just getting the best 17 they can together as quick as possible. That you can basically surrender around 13 and 17, and if you have a dud team that week, all right, it's 2 losses I'll cop, but I'll be well better set up for the back end of the season, save a few trades. Overall players chasing ranks, Tago plays in the best team in the comp, in a great position, plays round 13. It's just madness to sell him. It's a stupid idea. Hold on to him. And as you said, I'm not playing this week. You're not playing this week. He has a few tough games coming up. You don't have to play him in your 17, but hold him. We can reassess by round 13 and then more than likely move him on round 14.
And if something happens that the best edge in rugby league, the centre there, happens to score 2 tries in the next 4 weeks, all of a sudden you're cruising again.
Exactly right, mate.
Yeah.
Hold on to Isaac Tago.
All right, the next one comes from just about everyone with a fucking phone. If we have Olaquatu and IPAP, what do we do with Cam Murray?
Yeah, good question. And one put me on the spot a little bit.
There's 3 letters that come to mind for me. TPJ, if you're in the gambling mood.
Yeah, and a lot of people are going down that TPJ route. My issue with TPJ is that it's an obvious one. Injury history, suspension history. I rave on about it every week. Plays round 13 for the Bulldogs. He's a target I like, but I'm just happy to wait until round 13 for him. Sorry, battling. If between now and then he gets suspended, injured, whatever, you've basically wasted 2 trades and you don't get that round 13 number. Just wait on him. He's not averaging 75. He's averaging 61. Like, he's not hurting you by not owning him. Just be patient. I don't mind it as a buy this week, but just hold.
I also thought he was reasonably lucky to not get sin binned last week, dropping an elbow I forget what it was, but there was something very early in the game where I've been looking at TPG for a few weeks going, and then I saw that and went, okay, wait till round 13. Do not take any risk with this bloke whatsoever. Anything could happen over the next 2 weeks. Next question comes from @Adrian Messner. Too late for Hines, assuming he plays Origin now. Have you missed the boat on Hines, or have you just got to bend over and take it?
The bloke just scored 185 points, and he's averaging 90 odd. It's absolutely not too late. Not even is it not too late. Just get him into your team. Don't worry about... he's my captain this week, and I think the conditions won't help, but he should decimate the Raiders. They're pretty ordinary, let's be fair there. Just get him in your team. I'm getting Cam Munster into my side this week. Melbourne have a tough draw. He'll miss games over Origin. It doesn't matter because when he pumps out a 150, the alternative that you get to him that scores 70 that week, he's made up for missing that 1 week already. You just get these absolute guns that will hurt you into your side. It's
more and more just a case of don't outthink the fucking room. Get your premium gums, just get them in, pay what you have to pay. If you've missed the boat, wear it on the chin. Just get them in.
Spot on. So
imagine if you didn't do it last week.
I'd be gone.
I would have loved it. It would have been great.
Yeah, you would. I wouldn't be here. People, as you said, people overthink things big time in SuperCoach, and they worry about people that fall behind in rankings. Particularly go, why do I get Nico Hines? I need to chase ranks. So I need a pod move to other players. I'm like, no, you don't get Nico Hines. You fall further behind, and your season's done before you know it. So it's like, get in the blokes that can hurt you, and then once you've sort of solidified your team and got a staple of all these big fellas, the big boys, then you can start looking at centre wing pods or pods here and there. But just don't overthink it.
You mentioned Hines as your captain this week. I think he is the standout, taking on the Canberra Raiders. Other options this week, we've obviously got Turbo taking on the Brisbane Broncos, Teddy versing the Eels, Drinky against the Tigers if you've got him. Nathan Cleary against the Melbourne Storm. Not one for me, but a premium player. Mate, I want to ask you this. Obviously, it is going to be very wet this week. Do we start to look at guys like Ola Kawatu and Isaiah Papali'i potentially as a safe captain option this week?
It depends what style of SuperCoach player you are. Whether you're happy to bank a safe 70 from IPAP, but probably not have that ceiling of 120 or 130. I chase the high ceilings. I think if you're serious about winning SuperCoach and doing any good at all, you have to go big, even with the weather. So, look, if I was getting Tommy Turbo, I'd probably skip a him, barring kick-off, absolutely pouring down rain. But obviously you do have to take weather into consideration. IPAP's a decent one, but hopefully it's dried up enough by Sunday afternoon that the Sharks will put 50 on the Raiders. As a fan, God, I hope they don't, but it'll be a bittersweet one to watch because I will be skipping Nico, and I think he can go. We've seen in the wet in recent years big scores put on, haven't we?
Yep.
It's not a complete deterrent. The footies are that good these days that grip's not a huge issue. It's more the wet underfoot which worries me, but Nico Hines for me, mate.
And who's going to be your VC this week? Who are you looking at? Are you going to get Turbo this week or not?
No, I don't think I'm going to.
Okay.
And another thing I sort of go on about a fair bit is just building squad depth, getting as close to 25 active players as you can in your side. It's a good thing, massive thing, depth, particularly a week like this where you don't want to play guys like Xavier Coates and Isaac Tago. I've actually got 25 active players this week, so I can't actually use the VC loop.
Good God.
Yeah, I know. Don't get me wrong, there's a lot of trash in there, but I can't VC loop. So, look, I'll probably whack it on someone like probably Cody Walker against the Warriors early on in the round. They play game 3. If it's not going to happen because he's playing ordinary, but if Cody Walker comes out and scores 200, maybe then I can use a trade boost and get in enough there and initiate the VC loop. But yeah, pretty irrelevant for me this week. But look, if I was getting, say, a Tommy Turbo this week and I had Nico Hines at half, maybe VC Turbo, C Nico. What are you doing?
Yeah, I think I will captain Hines. I haven't had a look at my VC. I haven't decided on my actual moves this week, but I think I'd be crazy not to go Hines as the captain in that side, especially against your Canberra Raiders who are going like a fucking busted.
What's your thoughts on banking the safer IPAP option this weekend as opposed to the high risk, high reward?
I don't hate it. I really don't, because I think outside of Nico, I don't think any of these guys will go for more than 120 odd. 120 would still be a good score, but I don't think anyone goes above that. I think Nico's the only one with the potential to do that. Yeah, I tell you what, if we get to... That's going to be the hard thing, though, because I think the vast majority are going to captain Nico off the back of last week, matchups-wise. So I think I'm just going to play it safe.
Harry Grant's probably not a bad one. I won't be doing it because of the matchup with Penrith, but if we're looking at blokes who are he'll punch out his 40, 45 tackles. He also has attacking upside in that we know how good he's around the ruck. We know how many tries, that sort of stuff that he gets, line breaks, all of it. You're locking in the safer score with upside. Again, Penrith, not for me, but... If you're looking at forwards, who are the guys that that can go 100 plus rather than they'll score between 70 and 90 and it won't differ?
Mate, I was about to say the only thing with Grant is that, yes, he's playing Penrith, and I think that game is in the most danger of that field being an absolute shit fight. But, mate, that might help Harry Grant a little bit. If they play a little bit more straight or a little bit more direct, less expansive, it could help him. But it's Nico Hines for me, and then I'll work out a VC. Red Rover?
I think so, mate.
Guys, thank you for joining us once again on Beers and Breakevens, brought to you by Bloke in a Bar, and if I have it my way, potentially brought to you by Butter Menthols next week, if you don't fucking die on me sometime soon. Thanks for joining us again, once again, guys. Leave comments, like, subscribe, all that stuff, and we'll see you back here next Tuesday night. Cheers, legends.